And I think I'm live. I don't know, because last time StreamYard was like, I think I'm going to cut the first 10 seconds off. So I'll just talk just a couple of seconds here right at the beginning. And then, hey, what's up, Scott Walker with Imagination Creation Films. And today it's Friday. It's another fantastic day. And we have another interview live stream coming at you with Chris Vanderschaaf. I hope I said that right. If I don't, he'll scold me, I'm sure. And he is like a king of high speed and robotic film movement. And man, I cannot wait to get into that. Before we get into that, everyone go ahead and click subscribe to this channel because you do want to be a part of it. It really is, it's a group of filmmakers like all of us. And so let's not wait any longer. Let's bring in Chris because that's what y'all came for. Chris, can you go ahead and introduce yourself? And
yeah, thanks for having me on, Scott. So for anybody who doesn't know, I am a phantom, I guess you call me a phantom tech / cinematographer. I specialize a lot nowadays in high-speed motion control, which is robotic shooting, and anything product and tabletop food-wise, and all sorts of weird, nerdy stuff where we splash food around or blow things up or light things on fire and just get weird. So if that makes sense to you, that's what I do.
It's kind of like a dream job, really, isn't it?
It's pretty amazing. I'm not going to lie. I absolutely love it.
So one of the things that we do kind of on these little chats here is kind of discuss your past and how you kind of came to be, not the whole birth thing, but the filmmaking thing, the birth of your filmmaking career. What got you started in film?
Gosh, that's such a long time ago. So I started in television, broadcast television, like forever ago. It was kind of a funny story, actually. It was in a really, really small town in Oregon called Brookings, Oregon. Most people probably don't know where that is, but my buddies were working at this little small low power TV station, and they shot me a call because we didn't have cell phones back then, but they called me up and they were just like, hey, you want to come help out on our TV show? And I was like, well, I didn't know we had a TV station. So I went down to hang out, and it was like a live call-in music kind of show. So basically, I just went down there, and I had held the camera before. That's about it. And so I operated like a second cam because their guy never showed up on this like live music set, and the owner happened to be there, and he was like, "Hey, you did a pretty good job. Like, you ever thought about doing this as a career?" And I was just like, "You can get paid to like hold cameras and stuff and like hang out?" And he's like, "Yeah." And he's like, "When can you start?" And I was like, "How's tomorrow morning?" And that was it. That was like the beginning of all of it. I quit my job. I think I was working at like Ray's Food Place. It's like a Safeway or a Fred Meyer's for anybody who doesn't know, like stocking shelves. And I was like, this is way more fun. So I just started doing that. And that was the beginning of all of it. So it's been a lot of years since then, obviously. But after a couple of years doing like the TV thing, I realized I wasn't a big fan of like live news and that kind of style, that format. So I figured out what freelancing was, because people would come into the station and they'd need commercials done, and the station wouldn't necessarily want to do them, so they just sub them out to me. And I was like, oh, that's pretty cool. You can just kind of work on all these other projects. So that led to learning how to freelance, which led to traveling around, which led to meeting new people and working with agencies. And just years after, kind of how the same process goes for everybody. You do that for a whole bunch of years and you just keep meeting people. And then one day I got on set with a Phantom camera, and I was like, what the heck is this thing? And it was a really cool one, luckily, because we did fire breathing. That was my very first Phantom shoot I was ever a part of. And so it pretty much just blew my mind. I was like, holy crap, like this is so slow. This is way different than shooting 24. I was just like, this dude blowing fireballs over here, and like, it looks insane. And right then and there, I knew like, okay, yeah, I'm going to try to specialize in this. And that was quite a few years ago now, but that was sort of, the quick version of how it all, came up. So.
Yeah, Phil just stopped by, Phil Lawrence, to drop in and say, hey, you're a G, Chris.
Phil Lawrence. That dude is such a legend.
He
I met
is.
him way back in the beginning when I was just starting to get into Phantom stuff, and he's like the nicest dude. He let me like pick his brain on the whole Tokina thing that he shot when they very first
Yeah.
like came out with the Vista
Yeah.
Primes, and everybody was like, "Oh my gosh!" And his stuff like just insane. And he talked to me for like 20 minutes. Like I never even knew the dude. He's just always been
He's
such a great dude. And
he's one of the
obviously, he's like, yeah, he's an incredible cinematographer, and he's a killer Phantom dude.
oh yeah.
So I get to pick his brain sometimes about that kind of stuff. So thanks,
He's
dude.
extremely knowledgeable and very humble and just I mean he's
Seriously.
just a joy to
Yeah.
talk to, and I love calling him my friend because I just every once in a while I just go out there, hey man, what do you think? And he's always
Yeah.
out there. Perfect.
Yeah.
Plus his
Totally.
stories, I'd love someday to get him on here and let him share some
Oh my
stories. He's
gosh.
got some great
Seriously.
stories.
Oh man, I'm not even just all the film stuff, but like the squirrel suit stuff that he does. Like that's
Yep.
wild, man. Like, oh my gosh, he's got to have some crazy stories. So that would be really cool.
So you do high speed shoots and you do robotic shoots and motion control shoots.
Yeah, yeah. These days, I'm trying to, as much as possible, specialize in the whole high-speed world because it's what I enjoy doing the most over anything else. I do other things. I do like social media stuff. I still do editing and animation, and I do Cineflex operating and other things. But most of the time, the only thing I really talk about or post or pursue heavily is the Phantom stuff. So when you're talking motion control, you usually mean with a robotic arm when you're talking Phantom motion control. So that's like the Bolt or the Kira, which is another very recognizable one. So those are kind of, I would maybe say that those are probably the two, like the top two as far as recognition that everybody knows of. There's other manufacturers that kind of make the same thing. Most of the robots are made by like a different company, and then the software and the whatever peripherals are all kind of designed specifically for motion control. But yes, that's the world I try to live in these days is the motion control stuff because it's really, really, really fun.
So one of the things I want to kind of explore, and we can explore it at any point along the path,
Yeah.
or we just do it in order. I mean, you definitely have a whole bunch of BTS stuff. You guys are going to love this stuff. It's awesome. And he's going to go into detail and talk about what it is, how the considerations that you have to take in to do high speed that you didn't think about. Trust me, I was learning a whole bunch of stuff yesterday just chatting with him. And we can do some of that as we go, some of it now. I mean, we can talk about a lot of stuff, but if you have questions for them along the way, put them in there. I'll try to, if they relate to the topic, I'll get them in. If they don't, I will hold them and we'll get them in a Q&A session here towards the end. But throw those questions out there, get some conversation going. But what does it take? Let's talk high speed cameras for a moment. What does it take, or what do you have to consider?
What's different about shooting with high
Yeah,
speed?
I mean, yeah, I'm trying to think of like if I'm a regular DP or a regular cinematographer and I want to jump in high speed, what things am I already not thinking about that I definitely need to be thinking about?
Yeah, I'm sure it's different, right? Dependent on like every skill level, like what you're familiar with, what size sets and crews you work on, and what sort of lights you're used to using. But probably one of the biggest considerations that if you've never messed with like ultra high frame rates is like the amount of light that you need. It's a lot more than shooting for 24. So that's something that I run into a lot when I'm teching with people or helping or consulting, or just shooting. Either way, is trying to educate the client on how much light they're going to need, because most people are, they're used to renting out what you need for a 24 frames a second shoot. And at 1,000 frames a second, it's basically like 5.5 times more light. So it's like 5.5 stops more. So you'd be shooting with something way bigger. Like if you had like an Alexa Mini, or just, even like an A7S, some sort of like camera that you're used to shooting 24 on, that's like, fairly light sensitive, you could throw up, like a 1K and fill a lot. Like you put up a Sky Panel or a Gemini and you can get a lot of exposure out of it. But that same light at 1,000 frames a second, it's not going to do hardly anything. So you're looking at like 10Ks and 20Ks and really big fixtures. And depending on what you're shooting, you know, if you're trying to light like a whole entire room, you need a lot of them. So you know, lighting is definitely a huge consideration that is pretty challenging for people, because if they're not familiar with it, it's really easy to not bring enough, I guess, is the way to say it, especially because there's a huge difference too if you're lighting tabletop, right, which is usually a pretty small shot, you know, like a product or a box or like a bowl of cereal or like a pour into something, and that's you know, like a 2 foot by 2 foot area maybe, versus a whole entire room, you know, with, I don't know, like a kitchen set or like actors in it, and you have to actually light, you know, like a 20 by 20 space, you know, for a high speed shot. That's insanely different, you know. So lighting is probably one of the biggest considerations that people, you know, don't necessarily think of until they're having to think about it.
So here's just a right off the bat question: is what's your go-to lights when shooting above 20,000 frames a second?
I mean, it's kind of preference, you know. It really depends on the shot, but I still like big tungsten. I love big tungsten lights. Besides the fact that they're stupid hot and they melt everything. Other than that, they're great. You know, they give you a lot of output. They don't flicker. You know, the CRI is great on them. You know, all that. But they're big and they're bulky and they require a lot of power. You got to have 3-phase power. You know, so that can be a, you know, huge pain in the butt, and they melt everything. So that kind of sucks. HMIs can be really great, but a lot of times you can still have flicker issues, you know, if you have like a bad ballast or something, you know. So, and they get arc wander, which is like flicker, but it's almost like this weird scrolly,
kind of
funky
wave,
flicker. Yeah, it's a really strange thing. So those definitely can work. I've used them quite a few times, but it's like anything, you have to really, if you get a chance to, test the fixture beforehand, you know, because a lot of people use a fixture at like 24 or like 120 or something, but they haven't used it at like 600 or 800 or 1,000. So they're like, oh yeah, it's fine, it's great. But then you get it on set and, you know, it's not. So we always try to have multiple options, you know, and additional ballasts in case one of them's just not working right. But HMI can definitely do the trick. LED is getting better, you know, every day. I love the LED stuff, but there's not a lot of options out there that are big wattage LED.
Have you seen the Mole Richardson 20K LED?
Mm-hmm.
You used
Yeah,
it?
I wanna mess with it. I haven't had a chance to. I've used their 10Ks a lot, the 10K LEDs. Those are great. But I've never used the 20K. I would like to. They're harder to find though.
Yeah, they are, because it's a small company and very,
mm-hmm.
you know, they just put them out, what, a year ago or so, and they're. I'm not really sure how they do it. There must be a giant block of COBs in there.
Yeah, I looked inside of them before, and they're pretty gnarly. The heat sink, I think, on the 20K was like this big.
Yeah,
was like,
I mean, the whole giant. 20K is still this big around. It's giant.
Yeah, it's scary.
But the heat has got to be so much better. What about the flicker? How is it on that?
I haven't seen any flicker issues on the 5K and 10Ks from the Mole. They're great. You know, the color temperature, if I remember last time I shot with them, is like kind of green, you know. But I think the main reason that people don't shoot with them is they're kind of hard to find, you know, depending on where you are. If you're in a big place, then you can probably find them fairly easily. But other than that, they're also pretty expensive to rent, you know, versus something like tungsten. So things can kind of even out though, you know, because once you start bringing in big tungsten, you got to have distro. You know, you got to be able to fit it in your set. You got to be able to not fry everybody to death. So, I mean, there's pros and cons to all of it. I'm sure, you know, producers have their ways of trying to play with the budget and figure out how to get stuff done. So, it's interesting.
I have a question here that we're going to answer through these BTS here, but I'm going to put number one. This one. Here we go. Angels ever shot with a Lauer probe combo exposure killer?
Oh yeah.
Yep.
Yes.
And we will talk
absolutely
about that.
Horrible.
We've definitely got some good stuff here.
Yeah, I think that's one of the shots on there.
Yeah,
it is brutal because I think it's F14 wide open or 14.
It starts at F14, but you don't want to shoot it at F14.
No, I have one, and it's It's just incredibly hard to shoot with.
It is. It is. I didn't do any, well, I did some slow motion with it, but for the most part, I was trying to use like LEDs, and I was doing it almost in a time-lapse mode just so I could absorb everything, which doesn't work for, product shots like this.
Totally.
Let's see here. All right, let's jump into some of your BTS. Do you want to show, like, the first one is Cheesecake Factory? Do you want to show videos first, or do you want to show behind the scenes? Which one?
It doesn't really matter to me. I think maybe just start with the videos. It's kind of easier to so see when you actually see the slow-mo happen.
All right, so we'll put this up here, and there's two of us. So this one I can do audio. This is number one, so I'm going to go with number one. Let's see. It's just going to play the next one. Okay. So video number one, if you want to talk about it over it, that's fine.
Yeah. So this is, they're obviously styling the chocolate chunks, and then, he's going to chip out a piece. It looks like it's kind of freaking out. There it goes. Yeah. So obviously, if you've ever been on a food shoot, they style a lot of options. That's him chiseling it. And this is like the 3D BTS or 360, I should say. That's the final shot right there at 1,000.
That's 1,000. Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
That's one of the little inside jokes that Chris and I have is, like, every time he posts those, if you don't follow him on Instagram, you need to follow him. But he always posts these, which frame rate? And so he has a 240, a 480, and a 1,000. And it's almost 100% of the time. I love the 480 most. But the chocolate one, I was like, 1,000. It looks so good on there. Well, let's see that again here. Let's see.
Well, even that's actually speed ramped.
Yeah, you can see the beginning.
They pretty much almost every time speed ramp slow-mo shots in commercials, just because it looks cool, I guess. And you have to fit so much into such a tiny amount of time. It's usually like 2 or 3 seconds you're using, if that, in the actual spot. So.
And then here's.
But yeah, that one. Oh, this is the poor one, I think.
Yeah, we'll play the videos, and we'll just go through the photos, and you can kind of go into detail.
Cool.
But you go ahead and talk through these.
So they're pouring chocolate. We made like a little half pipe, if you will, so the chocolate could collide together, and then we're focusing right at the bottom of the half pipe, and so it splashes together, and then you get this, like, light and dark chocolate wave explosion sort of effect that you see right there. This whole Cheesecake Factory thing was for Godiva chocolate cheesecake. So it was, all these playing on chocolate and powder, and, if you watch the whole thing, I might have sent you a link that people can watch later. But it's basically just a recipe video of the cake itself. And so these are just all the different little shots from it.
I kind of like chocolate, and so I noticed that was all manual, just manual people pouring. Was it something that doesn't matter? Because we're going to get into rigging in some of the discussions here too. But in this case, is it not required? What?
Yeah, it's totally a time and a budget thing. Not every shot has to have a rig. Some shots like this, work fine manually. There's different challenges for each option, I guess is the way to say it. So if you need something that has to be motion controlled, like very specifically with timed rigs, and the focus and the move and everything has to be exactly the same every time, that's when you would build a rig, So if it's something where it's kind of chaotic like this, or they don't have the money or don't want to do it, which a lot of times I think is more the case where they just don't want to spend the money to bring in the extra department, then you can totally pull off a lot of stuff manually. It's just not going to be the same every single time. It can be pretty similar, but especially with things like liquids, like colliding, or like paint and water and stuff, it's never going to be exactly the same anyway, because it's, it's fluid, it's abstract, it does its own thing. It has a life of its own. So It's never going to 100% be the same, but some things you can control, as far as like the focus and the move itself and whatever. So that one wasn't even robot. That one was on a Fisher dolly with a slider.
Interesting. And I can't get this second video to play. Interesting. The beans.
Oh no.
So fine then.
That's okay. That was There's probably a
to
photo.
Yeah, we're gonna go to the photo here. Pull up the BTS, and let me switch. Such a weird thing to have to. I can only share one image or one object at a time, so I had to go from photo to video.
Oh yeah.
Okay.
No
Okay.
worries.
So,
No worries.
nope. There we go. Full screen.
Yeah, that's a fun. I really like that picture.
So
It's
this
super
is
weird.
what this is part of that recipe you're talking about.
Mm-hmm. Yeah,
And
that was
so,
there's like a mixing bowl for this shot was like an egg drop. I don't think it even got used in the one of the final cuts. We shot quite a few things that ended up not making it in, depending on which cut they were using, like the 15 or the 30 and all that. But so this is, if you look on the right side of the image, you see all the like lights clustered together.
yeah.
That's basically like making one big source with a bunch of 5K sky pans. And then that was like the gaffer's way of making a big key on one side and then filling it in from the other, but also backlighting. There's like two 5Ks hanging up there.
And
So
so, I mean, seriously, no joke, the amount of lighting that's in this shot.
yeah,
What?
yeah, this one's kind of crazy because it's a scenario that you run into sometimes when you're shooting some of this stuff. And basically what happens is you don't have access to, or they didn't bring big fixtures, and so they're trying to use everything that they have on hand to basically make a big fixture, or they have to make the set a certain size, so they have to have the fixtures farther away, so you need more, because you can do a lot of stuff if you can get the fixtures in even closer. Like you can do quite a bit with like two 5Ks if you can get them in a foot away from your subject, but if you have to have them 15 feet away, it's that whole exponentially dimmer. So it's like, well, there's all these factors involved in what makes things need all this crazy amount of ridiculous light. Plus you've got the big old AC tubes on the ground because they're trying to keep the surface cooler, and they have fans and they have heat shields over the lights, and the people are wearing masks and stuff, to like not get burned. Our departments, like, they're dimming the lights while we're working, and then they bring them up full, and then people run in and and try to style really quick before they're too hot and everything melts. So
I mean, yeah, seriously, there's so much in this image that talks about the things that you probably didn't consider when doing high-speed shooting. I mean, how many watts of light are we using? Those are all tungsten, right?
Yeah, I think I'd have to count them up, but when I was posting it, like when the job was happening a while back, if I remember, I want to say it's like 75,000 watts or something. It was pretty ridiculous.
So you're in a studio space as normal, and so
Yep.
what was the temperature in that room?
Oh, it was very hot. Yeah. Luckily, because of all the AC units and everything, and the actual shooting space was relatively away, from like the client and VTR and Video Village of the producers and whatever, so they were not dying way over there. But when you got underneath the lights, it was boiling. I mean, literally, we're melting chocolate, we're melting the cake, 30 seconds in, 45 seconds in, it's like, okay, this one's done, we need a new one. So they would bring things, they would have like 5 or 6 versions at least on hand, just so you could throw one in and everybody had to be ready and then trigger your shot and get out of there. So
The most expensive easy bake oven ever.
Oh yeah, it's pretty ridiculous. We've definitely been on set blowing stuff up with like eggs, and the eggs will like cook themselves on like the surfaces. It's gross. It's awesome, but it's really gross.
So you've got air conditioning units. Are you supplementing air conditioning from what's provided in the house already? Obviously with the tubes there, but are you also bringing in some to try to cool the space, or are you just?
Yes. Yeah. So they have their own AC in the studio. This was at Goal Line Studio, close to San Francisco, and they have a pretty large space. They have, their normal AC, but they brought in specifically like this AC refrigeration unit that's sort of like portable on wheels that they could literally run these, crazy tubes into and point them directly at whatever and just blast it to try to keep that area as cold as possible. And the stuff, you'll see these little like fans on the ground. Sometimes it's kind of hard to tell in this picture, but
there's
like
two
box
of them I can
fans.
see. Yeah.
And they have all that, and then they have heat shields, which it basically looks like, if you've never seen those before, like some of the 4x frames, you know, that aren't like these ones. I think are actually diffusion frames. They look like more opaque, but like the heat shields basically look like almost like cellophane. They're clear, but it helps disperse some of the heat in between like the 5Ks and like the people. So, but without really changing the quality of the light. So it's an interesting thing. I don't see it used very much, but I've run into it a couple times, and I don't know that it really does that much with the heat shield. But
in this shot, where is the camera?
Okay, yeah. So
is there a better frame to go to?
Yeah, there's probably another one to go to, but there's two people there, and the camera would be on the opposite side of the bowl, behind like that 4x frame.
Gotcha. Okay.
So you can't really see it in here. You can kind of see, if you look at the person on the left, there's like the dolly
the arm
slider hanging out there, kind of right behind his head, and so the camera's hanging off of that. It's like underslung.
Okay. So let's see here. This is, what is this shot?
Yeah, that's kind of the whole bird's eye view of, you've got producers and boards and everything on the left, and then, you know, VTR is in the middle, and then our sort of like AC prep areas on the right, and then sort of further back where you see the light emulating and shooting towards the ceiling, you know, covered in like a wall of flags. That is like the shooting spot.
Interesting.
So, yeah, because a lot of times they'll do that too, especially when clients are right there. They'll have to, you know, like make a wall so the lights don't blind the clients and they can actually see the monitors. Because that's why I always wear sunglasses. Like, I'm always carrying a pair of sunglasses on set, because it gets so bright that you got to throw your shades on, because you can't even.
So it's really not because you're just that cool. It's you have a purpose.
They're actually functional.
They're functional. I like that.
Though. Yeah.
Okay, so this is that cheese, the pour here with your half pipe.
This is the crazy little half pipe thing, which is really cool. That's the first time I had ever done like that specifically. I don't remember who came up with the idea. I'm pretty sure it was their Key Grip, but he brought in this. I'm not sure what the material is. It's sort of like not plastic? Like Lexan. It's like, it's a plasticky type material, but it's very thin and pliable, obviously. And so, you know, they just cardellini'd together two like wooden blocks, not 2x4s, but like, you know, like maybe 1x4s, like really thin 1/4 inch, you know, wooden strips to grab, to pinch both sides, and just armed them off of stands, and then, you know, kind of got them to the space where it would make a U shape like a half pipe, and it worked. It actually worked. So
that material, cool. I think, is the same material that those super flexible cutting boards. I think that's what they are. It's not silicone; it's a plastic, but they're just really flimsy, almost like a binder cover for a notepad.
Totally. Yeah, it definitely was interesting. It was kind of tough, like, to make it work exactly right, because there's the whole human element of timing and whatnot. But we got it. I think we shot that one like 5 or 6 different times, until they got the one that they were happy with, and then we could move on.
And what frame rate
it was melting? That was 1,000.
1,000.
Mm-hmm. Most of the liquid stuff we do at 1,000. Excuse me. Oh, that's my little controller. So I wanted to show that, because that's absolutely my favorite way to operate Phantom cameras with. So it's called okay, now I forgot. It's called iPhantom. So it's an app. It's an app that can run off of any like Apple device. I'm pretty sure it runs off Android as well. But you basically have all the camera controls via Wi-Fi. So it's like so much better than having to run over and hand trigger, or the absolute worst way, which Phantom would probably be annoyed about that. But PCC is not a fun way to operate Phantoms, because you're tethered to a laptop, and it just makes things kind of a big pain in the butt. But this is like amazing. You could be standing like 10 feet away, out of the way, and just trigger your button, and that's it. Like, it's pretty cool. Plus, you can change all the settings on the camera, you know, through the app. So it's really, really helpful. And you can set your in and out points and save and all that kind of stuff.
Interesting. Let's see here. Oh, tiny hands.
Yeah, had to have the baby hand in there because nowadays I'm always bringing the weird baby hand. I wanted to hear for the baby hand. That's funny. It's, actually when I was there, the AC had a baby hand also, and so we were high-fiving. It was pretty great. That's happened like 3 times now.
It's so
It's
creepy.
really funny. They're the creepiest thing ever. It's great. I love it.
Especially when you do them in slow motion, it just looks.
Oh yeah. It's really weird. People either love it or hate it, and I kind
Right.
of like both options.
I can see
Cracks
people
up
get
either
wigged
way.
out over it. Okay, here's
Oh yeah,
another.
I
Okay,
mean,
that's
it's
more of
pretty
that
weird.
bowl. Okay, that's
Yeah,
the
kind of
camera
the same
rig.
thing, just a different angle. Yeah,
Yeah,
that's
that's
kind
what.
of showing that they can, like they'll usually drop the house, or not the house lights, but they'll drop the lights down. Like a lot of times they'll put them like on a DMX controller, not to dim them for the shot, but just to be able to pull them down when we're having to work because it's just so
Right.
hot in there.
And then that's that camera, the rig that we were looking at previous, the overhead.
Yep. Yeah, it's kind of hard to see in this one, but yeah, that's the one. Fisher dolly with a slider on top.
And then that's a heat shield.
Yeah,
that
that's a heat shield.
So it's
Yeah, just in case no one had ever seen it. I'm sure most
so,
people are familiar with it, but
so
yeah,
its
it's really
job is
interesting.
it's not to diffuse, but to kill off most of the heat or as much heat
Yeah,
as it can.
just to try to deflect some of the heat when you're standing really close to it, because those fixtures are really hot. Big tungsten is stupid hot. I mean, it'll burn you, like, for sure. If you've ever stood next to one, which most of the
You
time you
shouldn't.
don't, but yeah, if you have, you'll find out real fast that it is very hot. That's why you can see in the left side of the frame, the food stylist, he was fully clothed basically, and he ended up having to wrap like a balaclava type scenario around his face and wear glasses and stuff because he had to jump in there sometimes for like 10 or 15 seconds, and he's just like, okay, let's go, it's cooking me, so
I've
it's
never had
pretty
to
gnarly.
use a heat shield like that. What percentage would you say it cuts? I mean, of the heat?
That's kind of hard to say. I don't really think it does that much, honestly. It probably does a fair amount, maybe 10% or something. I'm not really sure, but we don't use them all the time. That's for sure. Definitely not.
Interesting. Oh, wow.
That's just another random angle of all the gack, all the lights and junk everywhere. It's pretty ridiculous, but it's fun to look at.
Russia
Yo,
loves your tats.
Rob. Thanks, homie. That's so funny. I know Rob's going to come out with a full sleeve after this quarantine.
Oh yeah, Rob he's just waiting to get to the tattoo parlor. I can tell you.
Let's see. Yeah, that's
More air
another
conditioning.
fun
That's
one
the
with the
half pipe.
whole. Yeah, that's the half. But you can see on the back the sort of. Or wait, no, that's the. Those are just bags. It's hard to tell, really small. I'm on my phone, but yeah, the surface was actually melting
Oh
in
wow.
that shot after a while. So it's sort of like a, what do you call that? Like a linoleum sheet or something.
Oh
And it was
yeah.
definitely, it was getting kind
It's
of wild after
fusing
like,
itself to the table.
yeah, it got pretty gnarly. Well, it didn't help either that they had a metal table for whatever reason that they had on
Oh,
hand was
so
what the surface was. So it was
didn't
cooking.
dissipate anything.
Yeah,
Yeah.
no.
Okay. Here we go. Here's a
Oh, that's the beam
slider.
shot.
Oh yeah. Okay. And we saw a little snippet of
Yeah,
that in the video. It was just an over.
yeah, yeah.
And
So basically what it is, like those shots are probe shots. So they basically, raked the probe backwards over the beams, and they used basically like a steamer. If you ever seen like an old clothing steamer that's like
right,
metal, it's
the
got a
little
metal
hand
head.
one. Yep.
Yeah. So they'll style them, right? And then art will come in, or culinary, and they'll spritz over the top to get them wet looking, and then they'll put the steamer up through the bottom and start running the steam, and then, pull back on the dolly shot, and that's it. Like, that's kind of how it goes. It just
Now
looks really cool because of the probe lens.
And that shot wasn't really that much high speed, was it? It didn't.
No, that was I want to say that was like 400.
Right. Yeah. It did not look like it was. It was just a pullback, but
yeah,
because it was the probe lens, you're still using a ton of light.
Well, that's why we had to have so much light for that one, because it was definitely, it was f14. They didn't they didn't close it down anymore. It was pretty ridiculous. That thing is like amazing. The Laowa probe lens is actually really good looking, surprisingly good looking, especially for like $2,000. Like,
oh yeah, it's not even that. Yeah, it's
like so cheap.
It has a color cast to it. It's a little brownish, but you could take it out. And I like to run it like f/22, and it's really nice. It does vignette a little bit around the edge, and it's not quite as pretty around the edge, but I don't mind that actually. I mean, because almost everything is going to be out of focus anyway. So it's such a wild.
And comparatively to the if any of you guys have used the Inavision before, it's way more expensive. I think it's like 30 grand for the set or something like that. The Inavision is just really, really, really expensive. And it has a lot of chromatic aberration. Like it's got a lot of weird optical issues, which surprisingly you don't have as much in that little tiny Laowa, so it's like,
So what probe lens do you like? What is your favorite?
Well, I really like the Laowa. I just hate that it's f/14. It sucks.
Right.
But there's another one that I'm actually hoping to shoot with really soon. And I don't even remember the name of it. I think it's called like a mini Mac or something. It's basically like what do you call those? Shoot, I should have written that down because I knew that would.
Somebody will pop it up down there.
It's like I'm pretty sure they're based out of Europe, but almost like not a magnifying glass. Come on, think of it. Science. What science? What do you look at slides with? How can I not think of this right now?
Microscope.
Yeah, microscope. There you go. Gosh, it's sort of that technology. Like I think that's originally what they used to make, and then they started converting them into being able to use them on cameras. They're not like a really huge company, but I've seen them at like Cine Gear and NAB and stuff. And I've talked to them once or twice, and the stuff that they've sent me recently that people have shot with, it looks pretty great. I mean, it looks pretty impressive. And they're claiming that it's definitely better. So I'd like to check that out, but of course it's no help to anybody because I can't think of what the name is right now.
Yeah.
But,
I've told Laowa that I would absolutely accept a twice the diameter size probe with half the f-stop at twice the price. I still think that would be phenomenal.
I mean the Inavision is 2 or 3 times the diameter for sure, and it's like it's way longer because it's modular.
Right.
There's my lens. Yeah. So it's like pretty crazy.
Micromac.
Yes.
That's
it. That's it. Nailed it.
They told you somebody would come in there and tell.
Yeah, that's the one that I want to try next. That I've heard really good things about, but I've never used it, so I can't really say.
I remember one at Cine Gear. I think it was 2 or 3 years ago. That was like $7,000, but it was much. It was I think it was like an f/5.6 or 2.56. I thought, wow, but I haven't seen him since. I don't remember who it is, but I think it's funny on this photo. The one thing to point out is the guy that's completely shielded in the front.
Yeah, that's the guy I was talking about. Yeah, he's like the prop master, food stylist, extraordinaire guy, and he was cooking, man. I felt really bad for him. We were trying to get him in and out as fast as possible. So
have to wear radiation suits.
Brutal. Yeah, pretty much. That was a unusually hot one. They're not always that bad because when you have bigger fixtures, you can have them further away. So that definitely helps. It's still really hot, but it helps.
And this is more of the
fun AC shot, I should say.
Right, and then
that's just like offloading stuff.
And we'll talk about all the thoughts about the camera here in just a bit. In fact, we can probably segue when we get done with this. We can segue to talking about a camera, and then we can go into the next BTS. Let's see here. Yep, there's more heat shields and fans.
Yeah, kind of just different angles of the same type of thing. That was their way of trying to, you know, get a much larger source, to cluster all the little 5Ks together. I mean, they're not little, but you know, the
Right.
5Ks together to make
Little.
a bigger source. Yeah, they built basically like their own version of a big softbox, but we never ended up using it for that. We never ended up diffusing that because they needed the light for that probe. So
Right.
it was crazy. Eventually,
There's
we
the
brought
probe.
in other fixtures, yeah, and just got them really, really close. So,
So
yep, there's a
talking
little
about
probe.
the camera itself, let's dive in and kind of give us a schooling on the high-speed
Yeah,
camera options out there.
sure. I mean, Phantom is pretty much it as far as what you see on most sets. There's really not a lot out there. There's IDT. IDT is another company that's similar to Phantom. They do high-speed stuff. I haven't personally shot with them, so I can't really say much about them other than their stuff looks really cool, and I've talked to them on the phone and by email. So that's potentially a pretty great option, but I don't really know personally. There are other cameras that can do high frame rates. There's like old stuff that no one uses at all anymore. But there's like newer cameras that can, you know, like Red can shoot like 300 and stuff, but
Right.
it's always the same issue where by the time you're shooting at that frame rate, you're cropped so far, you know, like into the sensor, or it's down res or upscaled, or, you know, something bad that makes the image just not look good. So really, Phantom is pretty much the only like big camera that anybody actually rents for this kind of stuff. But I will say that it's kind of surprising. Some of these cameras are getting better. There is the now this isn't in any way a cinema camera. It's actually a point and shoot camera, but the Sony RX100, I think the new one's like Mark 5 or 7 or
8,
something.
yeah.
Yeah, like that actually shoots a surprisingly good 960 image, which is like, why does it do that? You know, I don't really know.
Yeah, because it's like 1080 wide, but it skips like 3 lines, so it's only like 240 lines high. But I mean,
Yeah,
it's close and it's
yeah.
good for
I mean,
fun.
I try to tell people, I get a lot of questions on like Instagram and stuff, you know, about like, what can I shoot? Like, I can't buy a Phantom. Like, what can I shoot? And I go get that camera. It's like $1,200. You can probably find a used one cheaper, you know, and it's like great for social media, at least, you know, at least to be able to put together an example of what you want to do and get funding to rent the camera you want to shoot with, you
Right.
know. But there's obviously different options of Phantoms, you know,
Yeah.
like there's the what were you saying?
Oh, I was,
Oh yeah, Photon.
Sutton uses Photron. Wasn't there a Kickstarter one that I think they actually started
Yeah.
shipping? Trying to remember that one, and that
So
one
there
was
was
not that expensive.
No, it's not. There, I mean, there was a Photron. There's another one I think is called like Weinberger or something like that. It was a German company, but I don't really see many of those. The Kickstarter one that you're probably talking about is probably the Kronos.
Yes,
Kronos
Kronos.
is
Yes.
they're out there shipping. They have 2 models. They have I think it's called like the 1.0 and the 2.0 or something like that. But the newest one that is out now says it can do 1080 at 1,000 frames a second. You know, like full 1080. Says it looks good. I don't know. I've never used it. They talked to me at NAB a year ago, and they just, I don't know. Like I get an email from them like every month saying we should do like we'll have a camera one of these days, but it's been a year, so I don't know if I'll ever use it or not. Who knows? But I heard it's okay. Yep, Fast Tech has some options as well.
So the Phantom that you shoot on the 4K, it could shoot 4K, but are you normally shooting 4K or are you shooting 1080?
Yeah.
Always 4K?
Well, it depends on what for. Like if it's a job, yeah, pretty much everybody wants to shoot 4K, just like any job. They want the highest resolution with the highest frame rates possible. So most of the time we're shooting on the Flex 4K, sometimes the Veo 4K. It really depends on what people want to do. There's like a lot of differences between the Veo 4K and the Flex 4K that people might not have considered before. So it's basically the same sensor in the camera. So they can both shoot, 4K. They can both shoot 1,000 frames or 960, depending on which version of 4K you're talking about. Ultra HD or 4K. So the big difference that I don't think most people know about the Veo 4K is that you can't play the files back once you write them to the CF card. So like when you're on set and you need to recall a shot really quickly, you can't just go into the menu like you normally would and just pull up whichever take that you wanted to show the producer or whoever needed to see it real quick. You would have to download the card. This is all assuming that you don't have VTR, you don't have somebody that's handling all the playback, which you don't have actually a fair amount now because I guess people don't want to pay for it and all that. So that's kind of a weird thing that I was really surprised by on the Veo 4K is that once you write it to the little compact flash card, you can't recall it.
And explain to people who don't know the difference between how a high-speed camera records to media versus how normal cameras.
That's a good thing to explain. So it's very different. So when you're on a normal camera shoot, you get ready, okay, and then you yell speed or whatever, you start rolling, and then you do your action. The camera's recording the whole time, and you go until you get whatever you needed to capture, and then you stop. And there you go, you have it, you recorded for 60 seconds or whatever. When you're doing a phantom shoot, it's different. It's totally backwards. So basically what you're doing is you're going into what's called loop mode. And I try to explain it like as a DVR, it's endlessly rebuffering itself. It's recaching, recording the same 5 seconds over and over in a loop. So depending on the frame rate that you're shooting at, you only get that much time of actual real record time. So at 1,000 frames a second on the Phantom Flex 4K, you'll get 5.5 seconds of actual time that you're recording. And so every 5 seconds, it's re-recording over itself. So it's endlessly looping over and over again. And then when you have say you're pouring something, so you start the camera into buffer mode and it's looping. You do your pour, you hit the trigger, and then it captures that 5 seconds. And now it's inside the camera's RAM, the camera's internal memory. Then you pick which portion of that shot that you want to save, and then you write that to the mag, which would be your red mag or whatever, but it's its own phantom mag. It's called the Cine mag. It's like a big fat SSD. Then you can rebuffer the camera's internal memory and you still have your shot saved on the mag. So then you can shoot another one and then send that over to the mag. So if that makes sense, but that's what you're doing is you're endlessly recording and then just saving specific moments that you want to write to the mag that you can then later offload to the computer.
And these things have 72 gig of RAM in them that they're recording to?
Yeah. There's different models. You can get, bigger or smaller internal memories, but there's 75 gig RAM models. I don't remember if there was a bigger one off the top of my head, but basically what that means is you can shoot, with the 5.5 seconds. So you're basically recording, let's see, I might have even written it down. Math is hard. Let's see. So basically it's like 3.5 minutes of real time when you play it back. So it's pretty ridiculous. It's a crazy high gigabytes per second type of deal. If you're using a normal camera that's shooting at 24 megabits a second or something, whatever, up
to 100 megabits.
So phantom cameras, like the Veo or the Flex 4K, they'll shoot 12 gigabytes a second, gigabytes per second. It's a massive amount of memory. It's a massive amount of processing that's going on to its super fast internal memory. So that's why you only get so much time. So by lowering the frame rate, you can obviously capture more time. If you wanted to do 500 frames a second instead of 1,000, then you would get 10 or so 12 seconds of record time, et cetera, et cetera. And you can actually use phantom cameras in run stop mode, which is like a normal camera where you just start recording and then it's going, but you're limited to the frame rates that you can achieve. So you can only go up to like 120 frames per second at 4K on the Flex 4K. So, and it rips through the mag fast. Like you'll burn through data. Like it's pretty gross. It's not a good way to shoot with Phantom, unless you really need it for something. So
you're saying on the Flex, you can play back even after you've written it to Cinemag? Is that right?
Yeah. Oh yeah.
But the Veo you cannot.
You can't. No. So that's kind of weird. And the Veo write times are way slower. So like if you recorded some sort of pour or explosion or something on the Flex 4K, and then you trimmed out, like your whole, maybe you only wanted 10 seconds of the actual action, and then you wrote that to the mag, I mean, it's going to write it real fast, like 10 seconds or something, like, and then the Veo would write that at like 45 seconds or like 60 seconds, or it's like, I don't know if it's actually 10 times slower, but it's way slower. So if you wanted to record the whole entire buffer, the whole entire RAM that you could, it takes several minutes at least to like save that whole entire thing on the Veo. So that's a consideration that's kind of annoying. It depends on your shooting scenario. Like if people need to reset, and re-prep things, and then it's not a big deal, then some people don't really care. But if it's like a guns blazing action scenario where they want to get a new shot like as quickly as possible, then sometimes that really annoys people.
A question: have you used the V2512 much?
No, not much at all. There's some of them I've used that. I've used the V711. I've used the Onyx, which is I think was called like the 2560 or something before they called it the Onyx. And then the 611. Some of the older ones. Some of them are like really high speed. Like if you want to do bullets and stuff, they'll do like 100,000 frames and crazy stuff like that. But most of them have lower quality images than like the Flex 4K. The Flex 4K and the Veo 4K, I guess now, are kind of like the, cinematography standard, if you will, like the filmmaker's version of the high-speed camera, because you don't usually need over 1,000 unless you're doing something that's really high speed, like bullets or, very specific types of things when you want to just super crank it.
Gotcha. Okay, so let's see here. Let's jump into some more BTS.
Yeah, the Lays one has some cool like robots and stuff that people
as
might
soon as
like.
it starts cooperating with me, we are going to look at it. There we go. Okay, so let's see. Stop sharing that one. Start sharing this one. There we go. Okay, so Lay's here. Make sure. Yep, we're good there. And
oh yeah, this was a really cool shot that I picked for a very specific reason. Yeah, here's the second version. You can see the little potato chip like sliding up and rotating towards camera. So this is a really fun technique that if you don't do food stuff, you might not be familiar with. It's called puppeteering. Again, here's the cheese grater shot with the robot. Yeah, that's the Inavision probe right there. You can see it's like much larger in diameter, but there it is, like squishing out that cheese. It's funny, we had to actually like nail all that stuff down or screw gun it down because everything kept sliding.
Oh yeah, and you don't want to lose your focus.
Yeah, yeah, which is always a pain. So there's all these little things that you have to end up, messing with.
Let's see here.
Oh yeah, that's like the jalapeno spin.
Oh, let's add a seed.
Yeah, always, and then flip it around. And that's just on like a drill, basically.
Oh, I was about to say, what just happened?
Yeah.
That's awesome. Let's see. More.
Yeah, those are all so much fun. And then I think I
probably sent
the potato pop-up.
Grab this one right here.
Yeah, it's always funny. The styling is, yeah, there we go. Woo! That's sort of like the beginning shot of all the different spots.
So that's a bolt move there.
Yep. There's that's the main robot move for the spot.
That was interesting.
Oh yeah, and here's these are like match cut shots. So there's a potato pops up and then chips pop up. And then in the edit, you know, once the potato reaches the height,
You're right.
to the
You've
potato
cut it.
chips.
Nice.
Yeah, it's like, oh, it's magic. So
right. It is magic, right?
it is. It was really funny. Match cuts and things like that are actually becoming wildly popular if anybody pays attention to like TikTok and stuff, because, you know, they've been really popular on there for a while because, you know, kids don't have a lot of other options. So I don't know if anybody's familiar with TikTok, but it was kind of like a Vine scenario where you hold the button down and let go, and then you can continue, almost like when you used to have a VCR deck and you would pause and then you could record something else at that point. Like it's the same thing with your phone. So kids can do like match cuts and stuff. So they're all over the place on social media, like little special effects transitions and like low tech, you know, camera wizardry. It's really actually fun to watch because, you know, people get really, really creative with that stuff.
And I really want to show this image, but for some reason it's not. I mean, just talking about everything's just not working for me, which is pretty typical.
This is how it does.
Yeah.
You know, it only doesn't work when you need it to work. It's pretty much how it goes all the time.
Just see here. All right. Let's see here. Allowed. I want to get to these photos. I mean, otherwise I'll just pull it up in Chrome and we'll view it that way. Screen. Nope. It's refusing to show them now in this viewer. Okay, fine.
That's okay. Can you bring up that video, the first video, and just pause it?
You sure
where
can.
The little chip's like doing its rotational magic.
If it lets me. Well, I can bring up the photos here in Chrome. That one lets me. Really? Oh, interesting.
Does it hate them?
Hold on. I'll tell you what. Let's change it. Let's change the topic while I figure this one out.
Cool.
So talk about cost, and I'll give you the screen here, and just kind of talk about
cost.
Yeah, the cost and considerations of cost of shooting in it.
Yeah. So phantom cameras are stupid expensive. I want to say that if I remember back when we got a Flex 4K, the whole kit and everything needed, you know, the download station, the mags, the camera body, the everything needed. It's like $160,000. It's not as much now. I think Flex 4K new is around 80 or 90 maybe. I don't really know. I haven't checked prices. But then you still have to buy, you know, all the other things. You got to buy the mag readers and the mags and all that kind of stuff. So it's still over 100K. And the Veo 4K is about the same. It's pretty expensive. Like the cameras themselves, if you get them new, are pretty expensive. You can sometimes find them on, you know, places like, I don't know, I guess eBay or whatever. Every once in a while, there's like a really old one that you could maybe get for like 10, 20, 30,000, depending on what model it is, or from other places. Like sometimes places like Love High Speed in Europe, like they'll be selling old inventory, like that they're not really shooting with as much anymore. They've done that before. So, but the cameras themselves are pretty expensive. There's that cost to get into, but then more costs that people don't always necessarily think about is the different lighting systems, you know, having to get more light, you know, so big tungsten and having to have the power to run the big tungsten, you know, and all those types of things gets fairly expensive. So when you're doing a shoot, like cost-wise, if you're doing a shoot, most of the time, if you're going to rent a phantom camera with tech, and everything's different if you want to rent it from like Able Cine, or if you're renting it from like somebody like me that's an owner operator, you know, and comes along with it, the pricing structure can be different, but usually you're looking at least $4,000 a day to get the whole phantom, everything set up that you need camera wise, and to operate it, and a tech. Plus then if you're doing a robot, it really just depends on what robot you're using from which company, and you know what you're going to need, like rig wise and lighting wise and studio wise and crew wise. So I know these are all generic like numbers and stuff, but you're usually looking probably like at least 8,000 ish for like a robot setup, depending on which one you want to get, with techs. That usually includes like 2 techs. So there's, so with like a big robot arm and a couple techs and a fan package and everything you need to shoot, it's typically like, around $12,000, and that's not even including the studio or the lighting. So it's considerably expensive, for food stuff. That's why it's probably so specialty,
Right.
because it takes quite a bit, to do it. So those are kind of like generic numbers, obviously everything's totally different. Every shoot is completely different. It's not unheard of to do like, food shoots like this for like 150K a day, stuff like that. People spend more than that. People spend way less than that. Sometimes people do like micro stuff, sort of like on a budget or whatever, without all the tools and whatnot. So
Gotcha. I couldn't get
it's
the
all over the board,
photos
like everything.
to work. I don't
Oh yeah,
know
no worries.
what is going on with
That's
that,
fine.
but I got the video. So we can. You want to fast forward through this, or let's see here?
Yeah, that's a great. The second angle is probably better on that one.
Okay.
That's the bolt, obviously. This one, okay. So, yeah, there you go. That's a good spot. If you could try to pause it in the middle.
Halfway. Yeah.
That is Steve Starkman, who's an awesome dude who does a ton of food stuff. And can you roll it back a few more seconds so you can really see the back of the bag? There we go. That's great. So you have the Flex 4K, on the robot arm, and it's pushing towards the bag, and then it does this like rotate, look down sort of deal. And this was something we had to do. It's called puppeteering, which not everybody's necessarily familiar with, but it makes sense if you think about it, because it's almost like, operating a puppet. We have the bag on a stick. So it's kind of like if you made a baby plate, and then put like a C-stand arm on it and then taped it to the bag or whatever. So originally the rig that we started with was a pneumatic rig, which blew air, at the bag. So basically the robot comes towards the camera. The whole concept of the shot is the robot's coming at the camera and like knocks the bag. Oh, that's what I'm saying it wrong. The robot's coming at the bag and it pushes the bag over, which then falls onto the branding, right? The Lay's bullseye potato chip branding, whatever that is that they have on all their bags. So, that's the move. And it was originally a pneumatically designed move to where at a specific point when you run the move, the robot goes and then the air fires and it pushes the bag over and everything works perfectly. And it just didn't. So, which happens all the time. Things don't always work as you think they'll work. So because of time constraints and because it was taking, it just wasn't working, basically, they went the old school route, which is puppeteering. So you get a stick, you tape it to something and you manually move it, and then it becomes the issue of trying to sync the robot doing the same thing every time with the human error of, okay, I think I went at the same exact time, but did I move the bag too far left? Did I move it too far right? Did I arc it up? Yeah. You'll even notice when the bag's not there, that there's a little tiny black dot on the surface to try to hit the spot. So that becomes its own challenge, right? It's just kind of a pain. But I thought that's a cool example of things that happen quite a bit on high-speed shoots that you might never think about, having to roll with the punches, and kind of like any other film set, you just have to be able to problem solve on the fly.
Sure.
And like come up with multiple alternatives of how to get a shot done when things don't go the way they're supposed to go.
How are you doing on time? We're about an hour in.
I think I'm good for a bit more.
Okay. So, because if I pick up the speed, I can pick up the speed, whatever we want to do here. Okay. So
excuse me.
Let's jump into parkour in Korea.
Oh, that was a great job. That was a difficult job.
I'll be the judge of that.
Totally different reason.
Let's see here. All right,
I love that little tiny rig. It's so funny. It's just, I always bring BTS stuff with me now.
Where's your head?
Yeah, right. It's hard to see in that shot.
There it is.
So I basically attached the little Insta360 camera to anything I had on that job because we were doing all of this. We were like, it was sort of like a guerrilla recon mission. I don't know like how to say that. It reminded me of shooting skate videos back in the day. That's kind of how I got, you know, into the love of wanting to do stuff, is because I always loved, you know, making skate videos before I ever got paid to do anything. But yeah, so it's just sort of like we had to climb up all these buildings and go through these weird alleyways and places we weren't necessarily supposed to be or didn't get permission to do, so we could follow this team of parkour athletes, because that's what they do.
Right.
If you ever watch these guys on YouTube, is they go into the craziest, weirdest, you know, most dangerous, not sure why you would do any of this kind of, you know, locations, and then they just jump across rooftops and do precision jumps and land on things that, you know, you shouldn't really be able to land on. And it's awesome. It's totally crazy, terrifying the crap out of me. Like I wouldn't do it, but I'll film it for sure. Like, so it was really, really, really cool to be able to hang out with all these dudes. And it was totally a new experience for both teams, because we hadn't, like, me and the guys that were filming with all the big cameras hadn't, like, you know, followed around a whole bunch of parkour dudes, you know, all over rooftops, and they hadn't worked with anybody, you know, besides them, because they're always filming each other, you know, with like GoPros in their mouth or little handheld gimbals. And this is one of the scariest shots of the whole trip, because it was I don't know, 16, 20 stories high. And I think I have it in one or two of the other clips. There's like a POV shot of them on top of the roof, so you can really see how crazy it is. And then there's like the slow-mo shot.
Were you just like shielding the camera from people seeing it, or just normal protection?
Yeah, pretty much. A lot of stuff we would either hide it in a backpack or throw a jacket or something over it, so, you know, looky-loos wouldn't be like, what are you doing down here? Like, because basically as soon as we start doing anything or the athletes start jumping over anything, everybody stops and they start looking, and a crowd begins to, you know, show up, and then the police are like, wait, what's going on over there? So it's kind of that. We're trying to be incognito, which is...
You weren't concerned with your flaming high-speed shirt?
Yeah, right? Excuse me.
Let's
Yeah, I know.
Next one.
So funny.
Go there. Okay, there you go.
Oh, yeah, here's the POV.
Oh, no.
Yeah, super scary. Those guys are so awesome, so gnarly. It's just like, I was like, oh my gosh. And you can't even see the full height of it in that angle. That's why I sent you the link in case anybody wants to go watch the video on YouTube after. It's pretty insane.
Any links that he has on YouTube that he sent me, I'm going to post them in the description later, so y'all can go watch the full clips. I didn't want to get a copyright strike, so we were trying to play it protective here. Is this the same one again, or is this?
Yeah, that's probably the same one. Yeah, that's the same one. Yeah, they did.
There we go. Oh, there's your
that's just another random shot that I thought was really cool, just because it was all silhouette-y, and then every time you jump in between these, like, which are actually fairly big gaps. I think they're like 4-foot gaps or something. They just all look the same. Oh, that was the big slow-mo moment. Looks really scary. It's really cool when you watch it in the actual final edit, you know, because you see all the other shots and you get the magnitude of the, you know, the size of the gap and everything from all the other angles and from being on the ground. But those guys are, geez.
Yeah, they've got more intestinal fortitude than I do.
Yeah, I would not. I could not. Those guys are so gnarly.
I'm not even standing on the edge.
From that, you can just see how. Oh, this is, I think, a snippet from that has a couple different angles in it, but it's so. Yeah, these are just random shots. Yeah, that's the same thing.
See, from right there, it doesn't look like he's going to make it.
I know. When I watched it, when I actually got to see it in the first edit, I was just like, oh my gosh. Yo, what up, Brandon? Yeah, and there's another angle. Just
Marcel saying happy birthday. I'm assuming that's Tim, not you, or unless it's your birthday, Chris?
Yeah. It's not my birthday.
It's got to be Tim. Yep, Tim, happy birthday. That was yesterday,
Happy
but
birthday.
All
Sweet.
right, so here we go to
Yeah, so
Alta X.
Oh, Alta X was a super rad fun job with all the Alta people, all the free fly dudes up in Canada with Peacemaker, the homies at Peacemaker. That was a really fun. Oh, that was the tiny little lens setup there for that day.
Yeah, it's a compact.
Like,
yeah,
super lightweight.
I like to backpack with that one myself.
Yeah, right. Oh man.
Oh,
that was
okay.
really
So
fun. That was
Tab.
yeah, it was for the launch video. Yeah. So Tab and all the guys came up. And I, yeah, that was on another Alta with the Veil 4K. So we had both cameras up there.
You had to have used a lighter weight high speed option there.
Oh yeah. 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 They had so many different Altas out. It was ridiculous. I think there was at least like 3 or 4 going, like almost everything, every shot. And then there was the arm car, and then there was, like all the little BTS cams, and then there was the drones shooting BTS of the other drones. Like, it was pretty nuts, man. It was pretty awesome. They did a killer job. They have two cuts that I sent you. There's the BTS cut that has like, a bunch of cool BTS in it, and then like the actual launch video. And there was also a first day of that too, where we did robot stuff to actually shoot the Alta X. So there's like a whole bunch of fun toys on that one. Oh yeah, that's a good place to pause. So that is a technique that not everybody knows about, which is called mag partitioning or RAM partitioning. So basically what you can do is like a computer, you can make a partition to the internal memory of, the Phantom camera, and then you can, shoot multiple shots before you have to save all of those 4 shots. So that's how we did the Veo stuff, because I think the flight time is like 15 minutes or something, or whatever it is for the Alta X. So like, they had to obviously get up in the air, and then we're nowhere near them. They're like out for all these shots. They're like out on a speedboat. So we're like way far away, not really being able to, just reach up in the sky and trigger anything. So we partitioned the Veil 4K to be able to rip off 4 shots, so they could just go and do all their chase shots and then trigger, and then find another angle trigger, and then bring it back, and then we'd offload it. We'd write it to the card on the ground, and then reset and swap batteries and stuff. So it's a pretty cool way to do things that not everybody knows about.
And how panicked were you flying over the water?
I think it was freaking awesome, man. I love it. It was crazy, but it is what it is.
Right.
It's always nerve-wracking.
Right.
We even put the baby hand on it. Like, we put the baby hand on a bunch of stuff, and I think we put it on the drone too, and like flew it in the air. Like, it's super weird. It's so funny. It's great. Everybody had a good time being nerds.
Well, that's the trick there is to.
Yeah.
Oops. Always use.
It's pretty crazy. And I think Pat and Brad took the baby hand and started like operating with it at one moment just for
there you
fun.
go. Baby hand.
Oh yeah, so there's obviously the funny thing about this is some people don't realize that that's a baby hand at first, and they think it's an actual arm and a hand.
Yeah.
Which cracks me up every time. I love it. It's so funny. I'm like, wow, that would be an insanely huge camera. Like, that'd be so funny.
The first time I saw that, I was like, oh, that is so creepy.
It is, and they get really dirty too. The baby hands get all worn out, and they look just kind of weird.
Oh, we're gonna shoot the baby hand.
Oh yeah, this is just random footage of everybody having fun. Like, they just started messing around, and
is important.
Set life, man. It's always fun.
Oh, he's already getting his lotion. Oh, no, wait, that's
So that's Pat. It's
I'm
so
gonna have
creepy.
to get a set of baby hands.
Oh man, it's the best, man. Yeah, there's the baby. You can't really see it on there, but the baby hands on there. This is when Tab was flying that up to head out towards the speedboats to start getting shots.
Oh,
but
wow.
yeah, I must have gotten a takeoff shot or something. Yeah, you basically, launch it up and then take off. They kick up a lot. The Altas, they push some air.
Yeah, And they've got a huge payload.
Yeah, they're awesome.
Let's see here. There's operation.
Mm-hmm.
And you're based out of Seattle or?
No, I'm based out of Portland.
Portland. Yeah.
Yeah.
The other
these
Seattle,
guys are pretty close. Yeah, basically. Not far away from there.
Let's see here. That one. And then.
Oh, yeah. So that's inside from the arm car. I'm in the front seat controlling the Phantom. Here we go. We're driving. I don't know if I shot back any further. No, I don't think I went back any further. So there's like 4 of us in the car, and I'm operating the Phantom, and Ryan's driving. And then there's 2 operators in the back running the arm car arm, and then the gimbal, the whatever it is, the XL, I think is what it was.
Yeah,
that
looks like a Movi XL, right?
Mm-hmm.
Okay, let me see here. If it's going to magic. Nope. Hey. All right, let's see. We're going to MP via studio here.
Yeah.
Hey.
Yeah. So, and then Chris was operating the XL.
Gotcha. I was going to see if it was going to start playing my.
Oh yeah.
The photo is not.
Oh yeah. Okay. So this is just other fun stuff. This is more robot stuff. So this is examples of some so they're pneumatic rigs, but they're not like tied into the computer. We do a lot of this as well, where we, pop things up with like foot triggers or, other ways to trigger pneumatic stuff, to just do whatever, like toss stuff up in the air and swing a robot arm around it. Here's just some more fun BTS in a smaller studio scenario with the smaller robot arm. It's called Mia. It's from Motorized Precision. And right. So that's me operating the interface, if you will. That's how you control the robot and stuff. It kind of looks like After Effects, actually, if you're familiar with Premiere and After Effects. It's a really cool way to visually, drive stuff. Yeah, and then just, fun little shots. A lot of this stuff is social media stuff. Typically, it's for somebody else, either a commercial or for like a collection of somebody's, like Film Supply or whatever. But usually turn most of it into split BTS because it's really easy to do.
Oh yeah,
that was
which frame
the whole frames per second things, right? Yeah, that was funny. That actually became a thing because I used to get asked so many times, like, what frame rate should I shoot this at? So I started trying to get a collection of different scenarios that people might not have seen at 1,000 frames a second or 480 or 240. And those are kind of the frame rates that I chose because they're sort of like incremental. It's like people are used to seeing 240, but they might not have seen 480, but they might not have seen 1,000. So it's sort of just like a visual reference library of, what things look like at different frame rates. So then you can sort of, your director or whoever can make their decision on, I think this is going to work. Because a lot of people have no idea of the difference between like 60 and 1,000, and some things look wildly different. Like shooting a person at 1,000 is ridiculous. Like,
takes too long.
Going so slow. Yeah. But shooting like a pour, like a drink pour at 1,000 isn't necessarily always that slow. So it kind of just depends on.
That's an interesting rig right there. I would have not thought about just taking the bottle and cutting off the bottom and pouring through as a funnel.
Yeah. Yeah. These are our like, workarounds and stuff to make things functional and easy when we don't want to build a bunch of weird things. We have so many weird little, I don't even know what you want to call them, like DIY rigs that we have laying around, and even stuff like potato cannons, and like,
everyone should
things
have those.
They're great, man, and they work so good for everything. They not even just to blow stuff up, which is really cool. But you can totally use them for other things. You can shoot stuff out of them for commercials, and we do a lot of that too. You can go on YouTube, right, and find those little air cannons that you just make with a, what do you call it, like a bike tire pump.
Oh yeah.
Like those are so easy. Those are incredibly easy to make, and you can do pop-ups with those, or the old-fashioned way where you just slap it from the bottom and it flies in the air, or throw it with your hand, whatever.
So this shot here with falling water, how long did it take you to figure out? I mean, there's mathematical there.
That one is a pain. That one is such a pain. We did a series of these, me and Daniel, where we did, I don't know how many we did, but it took probably 15 tries just to get the timing right, because we didn't have like an input output rig, which is sort of how you do it, where you electronically trigger it, and then during the course of the move you can say at what frame to trigger the rig. We didn't have that day. So we were doing it by hand, by just like a dropper, and then like eyeballing, okay, trigger now, like this is when it's going to roll off the leaf. And so not a very efficient way to do that, but it works. It just takes more tries. So that took a lot of time. That probably took us 15-20 tries to get the perfect center frame water drop for that one, because it was all macro. The whole move is like 4 inches or something, and it happens in like half a second. So it was just like, oh my gosh, I really love that shot, but it was quite a pain when we were actually doing it, but still fun.
Right. Let's see here.
Oh yeah, and then the milk thing is just Smash Labs. If anybody doesn't know, I do Smash Labs where we just smash stuff in slow-mo, because
which is
just
fun.
Really fun. And incredibly messy. So messy. That was really gross that day. It looked so cool, but it was disgusting. So there you go. Well, that's a fun one. So that one was actually pretty recent. Oh yeah, there's another fun one too that is a a manual table rig.
So that's just dropping through the fire.
Yeah, which is just on like a piece of black wrap, and then it has it's glue. What is that called? Rubber cement. Just one little line, and actually rubber cement. You can see it makes a really tall flame for what it is. Not everybody knows that rubber cement will do that. So
they do now, because I'm certainly going to be playing with that this afternoon.
Yeah, but just be careful. It's pretty gnarly. But yeah, so sometimes we do stuff like that where it's just micro, and those are two Gemini panels. I think I can't tell from here. Are they blue? They might be sky panels.
They look like sky panels.
But yeah, that's all it is. Just two little lights, and basically all that is doing is being able to fill in the peppers enough to be able to see them.
Are you Chris TV or Chris TV.TV on?
Chris V TV.
Yeah, that's what. Let me fix that. I thought it was wrong. It didn't look right.
That's okay. Everybody, Chris V TV, because my name's Chris V. So
a lot of these are from his social media, and I mean, he's very active on social media, especially Instagram and TikTok now, right?
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. So go follow him there
on TikTok,
because he's constantly posting stuff. I go there for inspiration all the time, just to see all the things that. I like that rig. Talk about this.
That rig is really fun. I get questions about that rig so much. It's a really old rig that was made. I don't know when. We've had that rig at the Via Studio for so many years now. I don't even know. It's probably like 5 years old. But we pull it out all the time now for slow-mo stuff. Basically, it's basically like speed rail and like pipe bearing clamps or whatever. So it's like an L-shaped, 2 pieces of rail that are held together with like a pipe bearing, which is, I don't know if you've seen those. They almost look like they're like bearings that can go 360, but then they have like a flat side that you can weld to something.
Right.
So it's like a plate welded together so that it can, rotate 360. And then there's, another clamp on top of that plate to let the arm stick out. And then there's a little one at the end that you can move vertically to mount a camera on. I will say it's pretty sketchy for the Flex 4K. That's why we don't usually throw it around. You can see like we've got a hand on it because the table's a little too lightweight, so we have to bag it down if you really want to let it fly. It's really good for the Veo. You can beach that thing with like 4 or 5 sandbags, and you can whip it all the way around, and it's pretty great. But the Flex 4K is quite a bit heavier than the Veo, so that one is a little bit sketchy. But it's pretty cool. There's some old like stock shots online actually where like Daniel's one of his kids was actually sitting on the table, and they're like blowing glitter, and we whipped the full, with a Miro around in 360, and you could do some really cool sort of like those, matrixy style 360 shots, but not having to have an array of like 60 cameras. So pretty fun stuff. It's a really cool table to build, and I'm sure a lot of people have been working on their own versions of it. I know.
Yeah,
I was just talking to somebody.
It's been on my list of something to build just for fun, just because it's fun.
Yeah.
So this,
well, actually,
yeah, go ahead.
I saw somebody build one. They actually tagged me in YouTube. They didn't build a whole table. They built a way simpler one to do like a 90-degree version of that, where it would only rotate so far. And they literally just did it with like a fenced hinge or whatever, not a door hinge necessarily, but like a heavy duty hinge and a 2x4. And they cut it at like a 45-degree angle so that the wood would stick up, like 45, but it could still rotate like that far.
Interesting.
It worked really good. I was super surprised. I mean, you can't go all the way around, but I was like, holy crap, that's a great idea. Like probably cost them like $10. Like friggin' sweet.
My wheels are turning now already.
There you go.
So this next shot here, there doesn't look like a whole lot of light going on here. What?
Yeah, you can't really see like the backside. There's the same amount on each side, and then there's one from the left of the frame. So there was 2 or 3 sky panels, and there was 2 or 3 2Ks, and they were all pretty close. The wide angle lens definitely makes it look like the lights were further away than they really were. But yeah, that's a Dutch Bros shot. We did a whole bunch of stuff with the probe lens when the probe lens first came out. Oh yeah, and that was the very first Phantom shoot that I was ever a part of.
Really?
Mm-hmm.
Ooh.
Back in the day on the HD Gold.
Ooh.
It was so much fun. It was like, what? I was like, I can't
Wow.
believe this stuff looks so
there we
cool.
go.
Oh yeah, that's helicopter stuff. I randomly threw that in there because that's other fun stuff that I do sometimes.
I
But
love
mostly doing
helicopters.
Phantom stuff now.
I have an
They are
addiction
so
with
cool.
helicopters.
Oh really? That's
Yeah.
awesome. Shoot, well then you'd really like Cineflex operating or
I
shot
would
over operating. That'd be
totally do it.
It's so fun. It's such a weird thing. Yeah, those are some random things. I always film BTS time lapses and stuff.
Is that a little
pretty much anywhere
Robinson
I go.
helicopter? Is that all that is?
Yeah, it's a R66.
Wow. How did you? Well, R66 is turbine though, isn't it?
Yeah, yep.
You didn't have the vibrations that the other Robinsons give you.
Not as much. I mean, it's still pretty crazy, but it's a Cineflex, system, so it can really handle pretty much anything, that the helicopter would throw at it. You really don't see any shift unless it's a massive amount of, wind pushing you from coming over like a mountain ridge or something when it really hits you hard.
Right.
But most of the time, even like all the vibration stuff, that the Cineflex is rock solid. Same with like the shot overs. They're amazing in the air. They're so stable. It's stupid. It's really ridiculous.
it's stupid funny how stable they are.
It really is. It's pretty insane.
So we have a bunch of you out there. If you got any questions about high speed, throw them out there. Let's do some rapid fire questions for them. While we're waiting for those to kind of queue up, tell me about robots. Tell me about your experience with shooting with robots and what you like, don't like.
Yeah.
Planning, considerations, thoughts.
They're awesome. They're so much fun. They're so much fun to mess with. You can really just do so many different things with them that you wouldn't be able to do without a robot. Basically, I guess mostly because, cameras are pretty heavy, like the big Phantoms, like once you build them out, 20, 30 pounds or whatever, it's pretty difficult to move that around by yourself, fast and efficiently and repeatedly with the same move. That's just kind of not really a thing that you can do very well. So having a robot arm that can do any move that you want, basically on any axes, exactly the same way every time, and pull focus at 1,000 frames a second, it's just cool. It's just really cool. I guess what I don't like about them is that they're really expensive.
Yeah,
That
I
kind of sucks
know.
because
I want
then
one.
people don't want to shoot with them because they're like, oh, we don't have money to get a robot. I'm like, you should do the robot. It's so cool. And they're like, yeah. So that's
Yeah, we,
probably the
we were
biggest
joking
downfall.
yesterday about the cost of the Phantom, like over the Red, and
Mhm.
how it was a very long conversation for me to get a Red, and then I would really love a
Yeah.
Phantom, but to get a
Yeah.
robot too,
Yeah.
I'd probably
They're
have to
just
get a
so
couple wives.
ah I know they're so cool though. I mean, they really are just great tools to have to be able to, do really crazy stuff, especially the motion control stuff, the aspect of being able to combine shots and do all the weird stuff that you just can't do without Moco. Like it's just not, I mean, people do it now with smaller stuff, like there's all the Kessler systems and there's like all the other ones that you can do with a Red or with the A7S or a Black Magic or whatever. I think you can even do them now with geez, I think you can do them with like the handheld gimbal ones, like
Oh
the
yeah, yeah, yeah,
DJI ones.
yeah. You can do
Like you
some
can do like
somewhat
move.
repeatable.
Yeah,
Yeah.
it's pretty crazy. Like, but yeah,
So
it's
you
just a totally different way of shooting.
so you've used Bolt and Mia and Kira, and
Yeah,
you're certified to use the motorized precision ones, but the Bolt
yeah.
is
So totally, yeah. I've shot with the Bolt stuff. Shot with camera control stuff. The motorized precision, which is based out of Portland. So Kira 2, Kira 1, Mia, which is a smaller version of that robot, and then Vigo, which is, you've probably seen it before. It's like Universal Robots is a company that makes robot arms. So Vigo is a universal robot, but it's programmed with motorized software. So it's a little bit different. A really, really cool thing about that, people use them more for like model movers, which if you're not familiar with that term, it is what it implies. It moves a model around. So sometimes when you do robot stuff, you'll have multiple robots. One will do the camera and one will do the lights, or one will pour something or move an object. So a kind of a cool thing about some of these new smaller model movers is they have these learning modes built into them where you can enable the robot as you're holding it to go into like a teach mode, and then you can move it to a position, record that motion, move it to another position and record that, and there's your move. You just programmed it rather than having to either drive it via, like a spreadsheet style, data entry, or with like remote controls and stuff, you could physically do it. And that's something like, well, Motorize is working on like VR technology right now, where you can actually move the robot in a VR scenario and look at your set and do all your stuff, and then the robot will like emulate it. There's a lot of weird stuff coming out. It's really, really cool. But yeah, tangent. Back to the whole thing. I'm not a certified Bolt technician. Like I don't run the Bolt. I've worked with them quite a few times, but I'm not a Bolt operator. But I am a motorized precision operator, so I'm capable of like doing the teching side of that, but not capable yet of doing the Bolt side of teching.
well,
So, but
you got to have something
they're
to work forward
essentially
to.
the same thing.
Yeah.
Exactly. Right. Yeah. Yeah. But they're
Jordan
both
wants to know
awesome.
what's
They're
your
both
Chris or what's your TikTok account?
same name. It is Chris V TV.
There
That's
we go.
it.
I'm gonna pop that one
So
up here. Chris V
you probably see
TV.
a
There
whole
you go.
bunch of the same kind of stuff.
Right. And then question from Tim here. What's the average terabytes of storage you
Ooh,
use in a single day shoot? I know it kind of depends on a lot of
yeah,
things, but in general, yeah.
totally. We usually shoot at least a terabyte, sometimes two or three. It kind of depends, like you said, on a lot of things. How much we're trimming. That's probably the biggest consideration, is how much of the clip they're actually trimming in camera before they write it over to the Cinemag. Because if you don't do that, if you don't trim, then you're shooting a lot. I'm pretty sure the biggest shoot ever was like 6 terabytes in a day or something, and it was just kind of like, because they were saving full mags the whole time, every single one, even though it's kind of pointless, obviously. I mean, or honestly, because most of the time in the slow mo, like your action is like probably half or like a quarter or whatever, and then you have all this like lead up time and tail end or whatever, and it's just like slow-mo when nothing's happening is incredibly boring to watch. It's
It's
just
not
like,
moving.
yeah, it's like,
Well,
wait for it.
so how much of the stuff that you're shooting or that you're using, how much of that is storyboarded versus improvised that, oh, this worked so much better?
Mhm.
You know, what?
Yeah, on the larger sets, like on the people like Lays and stuff that are spending more money. All of that stuff pretty much is heavily storyboarded and at least conceptualized. Like the director and producers and the riggers and whoever, or if they're bringing me in to talk about whatever they need, it's all sort of rehearsed beforehand, definitely storyboarded. But then once you get on set, there's that thing where it doesn't always work because
Right.
not everybody. So I guess this is a problem across the board in the industry is, budgets are getting smaller, crew sizes are getting smaller, people want to spend less money in pre-pro, and trying to figure out how to do it right. And they're just like, oh, we'll just wing it, which doesn't work very good for high speed. It can definitely be quite a pain. So because of things like that, a lot of times, somebody might say, hey, I want to do this shot. Here's an example. Can you build this to a rigger? And they're like, oh yeah, absolutely. It should be fine. But then it's not actually tested because they didn't, want to pay for it or whatever. And then you get there and it just doesn't always work for many reasons. So most of the time though, it's supposed to be storyboarded and at
Right.
least, supposed to be have some kind of working concept
Plan.
of how it's going to go. But
Give me an
yeah,
idea, just to play.
yeah. But I guess
Me,
that's different with real people versus like food, like athletes and stuff.
sure. Misha, I hope I'm pronouncing that right. It says, a film student and would really enjoy doing commercial work like you're doing. It looks fantastic. Could you give any tips on how to start or begin a career in this niche?
Yes, actually. I think if you want to get into high speed, so first of all, like industry period, I guess, when you're trying to work as a crew member, for agencies and different people, I think like networking as much as you can, making friends. Obviously, trade shows are fun to go to, like Cine Gear and stuff, NAB. Like you get to meet a lot of people you might not necessarily meet. Face to face is always great. You can always start building a rapport online, but then when you get to actually meet up in person, there's something special about it. So like building relationships, I think is always a huge plus in the industry as far as like getting works because we're all friends. We want to work together. We want to work together with people that we enjoy working together because filmmaking's hard. The days are really long. It's tiring, and you don't want to be on set with people that you don't get along with. So like building relationships and friendships and that kind of thing is a huge asset to have. Definitely a plus in getting work. In high speed, it's no different. It's just a different sort of part of the set. But if you're trying to get noticed to sort of transition into high speed, I think the biggest thing that you can do is have a portfolio, is have a reel. So do spec work. Like the cool thing about spec work is it's not like you're just doing work for somebody else for free. You're doing whatever you want to do, however you want to do it. So it is your work. You might not be getting compensated for it monetarily, but you have to have something to show people before they're going to hire you most of the time. Because if somebody is going to hire you for a slow-mo shoot and you can't show them any slow-mo you've ever shot, they're probably not going to hire you. So having some sort of reel that you can build yourself or with your friends or your colleagues is, I think, probably one of the biggest assets. I started doing that a long time ago on Instagram when a lot of people weren't posting high speed stuff and a lot of people weren't showing behind the scenes of how the rigs worked or how the explosions would happen and then what it would look like in slow-mo. And it's been great. Like it got a lot of traction because there wasn't a ton of people doing it back then. But it's the same concept, is just letting people know that you exist in that space, because that's I think a big thing too, is we're so distracted now. Like attention spans are pretty terrible.
Yeah.
There's like 6,000 messages coming in from Twitter and Facebook and TikTok and MySpace and YouTube and everything, and emails and mom alerts, and everybody just like trying to get your attention all day long. So people pretty easily forget that someone's even out there. So it's not necessarily that people don't want to hire you. They probably just don't even know that you offer that service. You probably don't even know that you're there.
You've got to be in their face.
So
you got to constantly
totally
be appearing on their feed
every single day. Yeah, like all day long. And then people go, oh, I didn't realize you did that. I didn't realize you had a red camera. Oh, I didn't realize that you shot slow-mo. I didn't realize that you worked with that. Like, that's cool. Like, show me some more. Let's talk about it. And then it just trickles down.
Adam said, I'll bet it's really fun to offload those cars for the DIT. I guess that goes back to what you're saying. Depends on how much you trim.
Yeah, it really is. And a lot of times I'm DITing most of my stuff because people usually don't want to pay for that position if they don't have to. So I'll end up DITing quite a bit. But either way, whether it's me or another DIT, it's quite a bit of information to offload, and those things don't go fast. Like when you have to dump a terabyte, it's not like a 2-minute process. So that's always fun too. At the very end of the day, everybody's like ready to go. They're just like, all right, like how long is this going to be? Like before we offload, I'm like, I don't know, like an hour. They're like, what? Like we gotta go. I'm like,
all the sound guys probably have jokes about high speed. Hold for high speed.
Totally. Yeah, probably. Yeah, seriously.
It's like they're the only people we can make fun of. Marcel, so what's your go-to lens and camera combo?
Oh man, that's so tough. It totally depends on what the subject matter is, like what we're shooting. Love the Flex 4K. That's probably always going to be my go-to for almost every scenario, just because of the functionality of it and how easy it is to operate. And how fast the write times are to the card, and then lens wise, it just totally depends like on what we're shooting. If it's macro probe stuff, I'd probably choose the Laowa, unless I finally get my hands on like a micro Mac and I fall in love with it. But I would choose the Laowa over the Inavision if I have enough light for it. Because I like the image out of it better. But if I needed to do, like an angle or something, then I would have to go with the Inavision. Well, actually, there's an adapter for it, which is like shooting into a little mirror that works. But it's just different. It's obviously different everyone. But there's a lot of glass that I like, so it's kind of hard to pick like just one. It's definitely shot specific.
That's cool. We briefly talked about it earlier, but what are your thoughts on the Chronos cameras?
My thoughts are that they should send me one so I can actually use it and have an opinion on it.
All right, let me talk to my contact. Can you send Chris one?
Right? Oh,
Chronos, send Chris one. Chronos, send Scott one too.
Really good things. Yeah, send us both one so we can do cool stuff together. It'd be really cool.
We'll just synchronize.
Yeah, I don't know. That would actually be really fun. We could do remote like slow-mo shoots. It'd be really epic. So,
that would be kind of cool.
Who knows? Adam, I don't really have a ton of thoughts on it, only because I haven't used it. It seems to be cool, and it's definitely way affordable. But it has other things like it's a C-mount camera, so that's a lens issue. You have to find lenses that'll work. And it's one of those things too. It's a little box camera, it's not like a big tiny camera. So it's like when you start putting those types of cameras into normal film set scenarios, where you have ACs and then you have, all sorts of other people that are usually trying to build up a camera, and put all this yak on it. That doesn't work as well necessarily every time with funky little cameras like that, or like the point and shoots where they're not modular. They're not made to be able to mount things on them. They don't have cages. They don't have, the same lens mounts. They don't have places for inputs and things. They're kind of funky. So it's doable, but it's different. It's a custom way to shoot, I guess.
So do you have jokes like when you're on one of those 75,000 watt sets? Do you have first AC and second AC actually be the air conditioners?
Oh, Jeez, right? Basically, oh my gosh.
Bring me my first AC.
It's so hot. Seriously, it's so
Adam
hot.
says,
It's ridiculous.
what's the most interesting thing you've ever learned about shooting high speed?
Ooh, the most interesting thing? That's a pretty tough question. I don't know. That's probably going to stump me here for a second. The most interesting thing. Probably just realizing how much light is needed for slow-mo was definitely interesting at first. Like, not even at necessarily like a techie, nerd level where you can get in and meter everything and like, really understand like a table of what everything takes incrementally, but like just realizing that, holy crap, you need so much freaking light to shoot 1,000 frames a second at a big stop, like with the pro lens, like a F14 or something. Like, it's just like totally ridiculous. And then when you put it on a bigger scale, like lighting a whole entire room or scene versus like a little tabletop area, it's ridiculous. It's just so ridiculous how much light that you need. Yeah, I always found that really interesting. And there's tons of different things you can nerd out on with high speed, but
So that's the most interesting thing that you've learned about. What's the most important thing that you would teach, that you would pass along to people about it?
ooh, these are hard questions, man.
No
Okay,
pressure.
I think maybe the most important thing kind of ties back to all filmmaking in general is that it's not about the camera. It's about what you do with the camera. It's the same thing as always. Like, it's so easy to get lost in the cool cameras, right? The big red cameras, the Alexa Minis, the large formats, the Phantoms, the Flex 4Ks, the whatevers, the big robot arms. Like, they're just tools, though. Like, it's like, I feel like, at least for me, and I feel like a lot of other people maybe felt the same way. Like, when you start having never used anything, you're just like, oh, if I could only have this camera, if I could only play with this toy, like my stuff will be better. The shoot will be cooler. Like, it'll all just turn out, blah, blah, blah. And at some point, once you've like been around enough of the toys, you realize that it's the people involved and it's the skill levels of everybody working together as a team, and learning how to solve problems collectively. That's way more important than the tools, because the tools don't always work and you don't always have the tools that you want. You have something that you aren't familiar with and you have to rely on another team member that has worked with it before, or you guys come up with a creative solution. Like, the whole process of filmmaking and problem solving is so much more important than the cool toys you get to play with sometimes. That's probably the most important thing.
That's cool. All right, here's a question for you. Go ahead and take your sip of water. I know you need it. Have you ever shot lightning in high speed or arcs from a Tesla coil?
I've never shot arcs from a Tesla coil. I did shoot lightning once because there was a storm and I had a chance to shoot it, but not very often. You should. Oh, Dustin Farrell is the
Dustin Farrell.
king,
I'm probably going to have him on just talk about it as a totally different way of shooting high speed.
Oh my gosh.
He's pretty cool with what he can do.
He's awesome.
The lightning is amazing.
Oh yeah, he just straight up chases down storms.
Yep,
like,
and then
it's totally wild. He's sent me some stuff. It's like, what the frick?
Yeah, he's got that that video. He got two of them, but that video of all the lightning as he's driving by in a car, and it's just it's insane.
Oh yeah, he's got great stuff on YouTube. He blew up from some of those films that he put together, and he's also got a totally insane.
Girls jumping on trampolines?
Oh no! Rig. Well, yeah,
I saw that one. Yeah, his motorized spinning rig.
The Man Show.
Yeah,
that thing is scary. Like, he told me about it before I ever saw it at NAB, and then once I saw it, the footage, I was like, holy crap, that'll take someone out.
He's got a spinning rig that's got I forget what size motor. It is a very powerful electric motor, and it's a really big rig, and it spins the background with it. So it always has cool.
It's so cool. Yeah, he's got some really cool stuff. He's another great Phantom dude. He kills it.
Yeah. All right. So any high-speed shoot disaster stories you can share or warn us about? NDAs. No.
Let's see.
It never
NDAs, right?
happened.
Never, nothing ever goes wrong ever. It's always perfect.
Think about the times you've had to send in your Phantom for repair.
Right? Oh my gosh. Yeah, I've luckily haven't had that happen. No Phantoms flying into walls or crashing or anything. That's good. I will say, I definitely think the lighting thing, back to that is always tough. Like, you need to figure out what kind of lighting you need for sure. Like, always bring more than you think you're going to need. Like, if you think only need one 10K, bring multiple 10Ks if you can. Like, it's always, that is consistently the biggest issue that I've ever run into on a set. Is we'll have a conversation about lighting, and how much light do we need, and then I'll make suggestions based on boards or whatever we're talking about, and then it's like, well, I don't think we really need that. I'm like, I'm pretty sure you do, and then they're like, well, the budget's not really there. I think we can get by with this. I'm like, well, I don't think you should. Like, if we can get money for it, we should really do it, blah blah blah. And then you get there and they didn't get what was they were supposed to get, or like at least discussed, and then they don't have enough. Like, it happens so much, and it's like, dang man, that's like, what are you gonna do? Like, you can't just get more light unless you're gonna push the fixture in like 6 inches away. Like, it's like, that's probably the biggest issue that I've ever seen on any shoot like that. And then there's the flicker issues, which is a thing that not everybody realizes. That's one of the great things about big tungsten, is it just doesn't flicker.
Right.
Because even LED lights can flicker sometimes. Even the high quality ones, they don't always, not every single LED light works, and if you start dimming things down, then you get into issues. That can be a huge hazard. Like, never dim anything down. If you just don't do it, like, and then HMIs, the ballasts don't always work, even though they're supposed to, if it's a high speed ballast, it has to be a high speed ballast, first of all, so there's all these little things. I think most of it's like, that, or people just, being reckless with communications. Okay. I just thought of a story. long time ago, many years ago, I was a part of a shoot. They brought me on as like a second operator, and they were doing an explosion. And I was like, cool, we get to do this explosion. So we had this powwow, with the, I don't remember who it was now. It's been so many years, but like probably the producer, whoever. We were talking to somebody, and we were talking to the pyro team, and they were going to, blow this thing up. And we were like, okay, well, this is how, the camera works and all this kind of stuff. Like, gave them the rundown. And then we were asking, okay, so like, what's the time we're working? Like, how much time is it going to be, for this whole thing to take place? And they're like, instantaneous. It's just going to happen. There's going to be 2 pops. The first one's going to go, and then the second one's going to go right after. I'm like, okay, great. Everything sounds good. And then when it actually came time to shoot it, there was like a 6-second delay in between the first and the second explosion. So one of the shots was missed. Like, it was only like the very front chunk of the second shot, because whoever it was one of the people didn't communicate correctly with whoever was communicating with us. And so all the times were like off. They were like skewed. So the buffers they don't record that long. They don't record. So if we would have known, that in reality, it actually needed to be 10 seconds worth of recording time, we could have adjusted the frame rates and gotten the full 10 seconds, or staggered, and each camera could have focused on one. But communication is huge. Like, especially when you only get to do something once. That was, I don't even remember. That was like, geez, like 6 years ago or something, but that was horrifying. That was absolutely terrifying. And it was just like, like, what a big letdown. Like, luckily there was like 12 other cameras. And I mean, we still got like, over half of it and everything. And it wasn't like a total loss, but it was just like a huge, really, like, if we would have just had, like, if everybody would have had the important information, like,
Just
it could have been
talk to us.
avoided, like, the whole thing. Yes, it was just like, dang it, like, no.
All right,
That
how are
was,
you
that
doing
was
for
probably the worst
time?
thing ever.
We're almost 2 hours in. Here.
Yeah, I'm probably good for another 10 or 15 minutes. And
Okay, so
I should
everybody
probably do something.
throw some questions out there, because I mean, they're going to come in. He's going to talk, and he's going to give you a lot of information. So get a bunch of questions out there. If we only have time for 3, then I'll choose the best 3 we can. But get your questions in there. I've got one for you right now. Have you ever shot something in high speed, and then when viewing the footage in post, you see something, see stuff you never knew before, or learn something that you never realized?
Yep, all the time.
Great answer. No,
that's like, yeah, that's it. That's all you need to know. I honestly think that's one of my favorite things about shooting high speed is you just can't see that stuff with your normal eyes. Like when you see something in real time, in real life, it doesn't look that way. But then when you play it back, it's all these weird nuances that you never knew were actually happening. Like when you hit like cymbals on a drum, you don't realize that the metal is like rippling. Like it's insane. Like it looks crazy, or even water. You just shoot some water out of a hose or something. It just looks like it's all motion blurred, right? It just looks like the spray of water. But then you see it at like 1 or 2,000 frames a second, and you see like the little droplets, wiggling in the air and like bouncing off each other. It's like, what the frick? Like, it's just crazy. Stuff like that is just really cool. Like you can really get into it and nerd out on it, especially like scientifically and doing all the fun, crazy, experiments.
Well, how much stuff like let's say Lays comes to you and say, this is how we want to do it. Do you go and practice that ahead of time? Or do you try a bunch of different things to see if it
it would? So every job's totally different. A lot of the stuff that people ask for at this point, I've done quite a bit of because a majority of it's like kind of the same shots over and over. At least the big shots, there's usually like a robot shot, like looking down, and then it spins forward to look at the front of a product, or like orbits around, or chips pop up, or something falls. Like there's a lot of stuff that's repetitive. But if they have money to let us practice, then I always like to do as much as we can. If it's something that's in question of like, I have no idea how to do this, like, so working with riggers and figuring it out, I always want to do it like on my own if I can, but it's usually a budgetary concern. They usually just don't want to pay for like the R&D to try to figure it out. But sometimes, like if I can do it myself, I'll just do it. Like I posted a strawberry shot with chocolate that's like spinning, and it makes this crazy like wave of, chocolate flies off. I just did that because the director, David, who's a really good friend of mine now, he was like, we want to spin this strawberry and have it look like, this cool thing. Like, well, we don't know, like, how would you do it? And I was like, oh, I know how we can do it. And I just went and grabbed a drill from my closet, and then I shoved a strawberry on it. I was like, look, it works. So it's like, there's some things that you can just mess around with and make like pretty easily. And other things take more effort and like intricate builds and weird stuff. And so, but yeah.
I had some fun on a food shoot recently where that's where I learned about drills. I'm like, oh, drills are so genius. And one of the shots, they wanted to shoot milk or heavy cream into a coconut that was spinning. Yeah, and totally. I was like, well, what if we did it this way? And I got the big sponger. We had like one extra shot. We would just do it. And I hit it, and it blew the whole thing apart. It was not what they were looking for. I still feel bad for that one. Awesome. But I was like, spinning coconuts. It's hard to beat.
Heck yeah. Well, you don't know till you try. So you just got to do it. And the cool thing about slow-mo is like a lot of stuff just looks cool anyway.
Right.
So it's like, whatever.
Oh,
like,
I was trying to destroy the coconut with cream. It was
yeah, there's some really cool ones with food, like whether it's chocolate or coconuts or things where you like pre-crack them, right? And then you put like a hose underneath, and then you shoot like milk or chocolate or stuff through it. That always looks cool. You see that a lot in like ice cream and chocolate commercials where like the chocolate bursts open and like, the sexy liquid chocolate shoots out, and it's like, oh, I'm so hungry now. So that's really fun to mess around with.
All right. Well, it looks like we've exhausted the questions for the time, and I know your time is valuable. You are Chris VTV on TikTok, Instagram. I don't think that's what you are on Facebook, are you?
No, I think I'm Chris Van or something like that on Facebook. Something like that. It was a long
Twitter.
Time ago.
Yeah, your Twitter, you're Chris VTV.
Yeah, I think I'm Chris VTV on Twitter, and I'm on YouTube also. And
And you're
I don't know if
Chris
it's
V.
TV or-
TV on your website. Right?
Yeah, that's the name. Yeah, that's the website. It's chrisv.tv because it's actually chrisvanderschaaf.com, but nobody can spell my name. So
I
it's just
can
Chris
now.
V.
I've written
Well,
it like
you
20
can.
times
Yeah.
now.
Yeah.
It's awesome. But man, I really appreciate you taking the time out of your busy day in this weird time that we're in to join everyone and share. I mean, we had a great crowd on here. There was a lot of people
That's
lurking,
awesome.
learning stuff, which I guarantee everybody learned something, including me, about 12 or 15 things that I kind of made notes over here on. But thank you so much for sharing your knowledge. And man, I wish we got to hang out at NAB or Cinegear. I guess maybe the fall Cinegear.
Yeah, hopefully if it happens, we'll be there. So it'd be cool to hang out.
Yeah, it'll be cool. But anything you want to say before we close it out, or? Oh
man, no, not really. Thanks so much for having me. Like, hang out and talk shop and nerd out with everybody. Anytime anybody has a question, shoot me a DM or whatever. You know, I'm super game to just talk it out.
The dude is very social media active and very he's friendly. And you get to choose which frame rate. I love that.
There you go. Those are my favorite. Those are really fun to mess around with.
All right, man. Thanks so much. I'm going to close this out, but I'm going to just go drop you down below. So hang on here as I close it out. But everyone, thank you so much for joining these. We're going to have more of them. We got a bunch of other fantastic human beings out there in the creative world. Thanks, Chris, once again for joining us. You're a legend out there, and can't say enough good things. And if you have any questions or comments, put them down below. Make sure you subscribe, share the love, use Amazon links, all that good stuff. Support the channel, support Chris, support everybody, and make sure you if you got a high-speed shoot, you need some good people. Get Chris, give Chris a call. He can hook you up. And as always, as I like to leave it, don't let your passions center around your life. Let your life center around your passions. Thanks, everybody.